Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order tonight. Our chair and our vice chair are both out of town, so I'd entertain a motion for a chair pro tem to chair the meeting tonight.
I nominate you, Patricia.
Any other nominations? Any objections? Okay. We hope 2 more members come, so we'll have enough to vote on all the issues tonight. We're expecting 2 others, but we'll proceed with roll call.
All right.
Some of our petitioners aren't here either.
Mark Kimmerer,
Present.
Douglas Gazek,
Here.
Patrick Coleman,
Present.
James Doherty, Jim Sawhill, Andrew Garcia, Patricia Joyner,
Here.
Jeff Dinwiddie, Thomas Tiber.
We have minutes from the September 9th meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Oh, sorry, I forgot. Yes. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any changes? Any? Okay, and the minutes are approved if there are no objections. I forget, I have to look at that. Are there any disclosures on cases we have tonight?
I have a disclosure on case 2010-024, Delaney Park Veterans Memorial. The petitioning landscape architecture firm is my employer. I asked to be recused from that case.
I think that's clearly a conflict. We've always kind of conflict as a financial interest in it. Is there any objections to any other disclosures?
Yes, I have one. Same case as Mark.
Commissioner Coleman and Commissioner Kimmerer. That'll leave only 4 members to vote on the last case if we don't have another person, which means we won't be able to take action on that case. So we'll see if we have another person when we get to that. Otherwise, it'll have to be postponed. The next item on the agenda is election of chair and vice chair. So do we have nominations? We'll start with the chair.
I actually moved to postpone elections until the next case when we have everybody here, next meeting.
Okay.
I suppose we can do that. I don't object. Can we do that? Staff, please?
Yeah, if Commissioner wishes to postpone, they can do that. But I think Mark needs a second on that motion.
Hang on, I'm putting them in. Okay.
Commissioner Tybor seconded. I think that's a good idea because I expect our current chair and vice chair may run again, and they're not here tonight. Any objections to postponing that? Okay, we'll do it in April. The next item on the agenda is just an item of interest if you want to comment on the retaining wall being put in on 3rd Avenue downtown. And I believe the deadline for commenting is the end of March. And you can make those comments directly to the USKH. The consent agenda, is there anyone who wants to pull a case for discussion? There are 5 items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Kimmer and seconded by Commissioner Gesick. So the consent agenda has been approved. And we will move on to the regular agenda. And the first case is 2009-149. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff just wants to point out that this project is part of the Context Sensitive Solutions, otherwise known as CSS, program that was recently initiated by the MOA. Under the CSS program, road projects will be reviewed by the UDC only once at 65% design completion. The project was approved for draft design study report by the Planning and Zoning Commission on December 7th, 2009. And so it makes its final debut for approval tonight. Project Management and Engineering is requesting site plan and landscape plan approval of the Klatt Road at C Street intersection improvements. If you look on your plans, you'll see at the roundabout there are 4 legs, and the 4th leg is meant to provide access for a commercial development planned at the northwest portion of the roundabout. The existing traffic light at the corner of Klatt Road and Timber Lane Drive, which is also the primary access into the South Anchorage Sports Park, will be retained indefinitely to facilitate safe pedestrian access into the park from the surrounding neighborhoods. In terms of the landscape design, the landscape treatment will play a critical role in a successful design of the roundabout by adding visual awareness to the intersection. The landscape design will consider pedestrian and vehicle safety without causing sight distance problems, especially on approach to pedestrian crossings. The roundabout's landscaping, apart from its aesthetic function, should help make the route more legible for motorists. That's all I have.
Are there any questions for staff? I had one question. Maybe I'm not reading it right, but under vehicular and pedestrian traffic circulation, it says the existing traffic light at Klatt and Timber Lane will be retained, and then a little further down it says it won't be. Let's see. Find the other side.
Oh, I think what you're reading is the easternmost entry across from Timber Lane Drive to the sports park will be eliminated.
Different entries?
Yeah, there are 2 entries into the park.
So maybe the petitioner can point out on the map which one.
Mm-hmm.
The one where the light is remains, and the one further east won't?
I think the eastern, one across from Timber Lane Drive.
Okay. Does the petitioner wish to come forward? Did you want to make a presentation?
No, if you have any questions.
Well, I wasn't sure which entry. It says the entryway across from Timberlane at the light would remain, and then it says the entry across from Timberlane would be closed.
Yeah, I'm Ralph Fensler, municipal landscape architect for the project, and there are two entrances into the sports park. The one at Timberlane has a light there right now, and that will be retained indefinitely. There's one outside the project limits to the west,
Okay.
which does not have a light, but that entrance will also remain.
There really aren't recommendations to comment on. Are there questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Dinwiddie?
I had a couple questions. First question you might not be able to speak to, but I go through this intersection at least twice a day. This is definitely needed. When you come off the new roundabout, the right-hand lane coming northbound that'll dump onto Clatt Road, on the signage, the road sign, there's the driveway that right now is existing that goes into the neighborhood that fronts back into Clatt there. That traffic, this right-hand turn will accelerate. Basically, right now, you have to come it's a super sharp 90-degree turn, and you have to come, in the wintertime, you have to come fairly slow to make that, not only to yield to oncoming turn traffic, but you have to actually slow down so you don't end up colliding with the car sitting in the turn lane. But with the gradualness of the change in the degree of this curve, you're going to have traffic that's going to be 30, 40 miles an hour. There's no signage on this pullout for a car. If a car wants to come out of this driveway and turn left to go northbound on C Street, there should be some sort of signage that says yield to. I have a feeling that cars are going to have to creep out so far on this to be able to see all the way around the corner on this diameter that maybe some signage right there would be a good idea.
We have the project engineer. Maybe he can answer that question.
Well then I'll hold that question and I'll ask the landscaping question.
Right.
The landscaping question I had was, it looks like a good selection of trees and shrubs, but on the quaking aspen, you have Swedish columnars, which are obviously imported trees, but the quaking aspen doesn't designate whether they're locally field collected or if they're going to be nursery grown, and that's a gigantic difference for quality and what the trees are going to look like, whether they're going to have a good form for, especially uniform in a tight island like that. I guess I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, if we don't specify, they can be field grown locally.
I guess my concern is that the field-collected quaking aspen isn't going to look much better than the Canada Reds that are in there now that are missing leaders and whatnot. I guess I'm not sure why that tree would be selected. I mean, quaking aspen field-grown has got a pretty wide variety and, you know, maybe my thought would be is if you're going to spend the money to put columnars in there, then spend the money to put a nursery-grown, high-quality tree to match it.
Okay.
And then that's all I had on the landscaping. The last question is the potentilla. You're heavy on potentilla, and that's a late bloom in this, and particularly this climate. Potentilla comes out really super slow. One of my concerns is that there's so much potentilla on the job that you won't really see any color on this job until July or August at the earliest. Sometimes, potentilla doesn't even come out, leaf out until June in July in the earliest. So, my concern is that, you'll have a lot of, basically it won't have any color into it until almost the time for the snow to fly.
Well, we do have a lot of spirea on the job, too. I think there's 2 or 3 different types of spirea that are scattered throughout. And one of the reasons I did want to use a mass of potentilla is, you're right, it doesn't come out until late, but it's also one of the ones that keeps flowering. It's one of the few plants we have that flowers even in the first snowfall, it seems like. So that's the look we're going for.
Okay. They're drought resistant. I mean, for a medium plant, it's a good choice.
It's a very tough plant.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for that.
Okay. I think I followed your first question, but can I bring this up to you and just verify that?
Yeah.
I also need a name for the record, please.
Paul LaFrance, I'm the project engineer.
That's right. And it's this driveway right here. And so the traffic coming off of here is not going to be as, it's going to speed up. Right now you have to make a 90. Right now you have to make a 90 really hard right here. And these people coming out to get to this lane, if you work downtown and you're coming out of this neighborhood, you're going to cross. If you're pulling out looking this way and traffic's swinging around here, they don't slow down roundabouts in this city. We all know that by now. You're going to have a potential problem right here that should be addressed with signage at the very minimum.
And point, so we all know I assumed he means here.
Or Paul, could you use the Elmo and put it on there, then it'll come up on the screens?
I have a color one if you want to use that.
Yeah, right here. One thing that should help with this quite a bit is that we've adjusted the curb line. We've moved it to the south. Right here, it used to be more of a 90-degree turn that went all the way up to here. So when a car pulls up, they should be able to see oncoming traffic quite a bit easier. The other thing we're doing is we're taking down this hill quite a bit to improve the sight distance. So when a car comes up, they should be able to look all the way to about here and see cars approaching. We also have, it's not in this plan set, but we've added signage to say if through traffic needs to get into the left lane. There's 2 lanes of traffic right here. So once a car comes around, it should jump into this other lane, and unless they're making this right-hand turn. And then we'll also be putting pavement marking arrows to shift the traffic that way. So we're hoping that helps the situation.
I think that removing the hill is probably the sight obstruction of that hill right now is that'll be huge. So, and the intersection itself is a gigantic improvement from what it is now, especially at rush hour traffic. If you have to actually go into Southport from Platte Road, you could wait longer than you can almost go to the Minnesota roundabout and turn around and come back the other direction, and it'd be faster.
Yeah, and that's the main reason for doing this. Just the worst time is evening peak hour. Morning peak hour is bad too, but evening peak hour is really bad, and that's what this roundabout should help with. It's also going to help reduce the severity of accidents at the intersection. But just again, yeah, like I said, we will be taking that hill down, and then there's a bunch of trees right here that block the view, so those will be coming down as well. So that should really help.
Are there other questions for the petitioner? Whoops. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion? Oh, forget to look. Okay, should we do the disclosures first, or we'll finish this? Just before we do this motion, we did have 2 commissioners come in after we started, and we'd done disclosures, and I just want to check to see if there are any disclosures tonight. Commissioner?
Andrew Garsha, no disclosures.
Jeff Dinwiddie, no disclosures.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Coleman, you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion to approve case 2009-149 landscape plan review for public roadway, Clatt Road at C Street. And the basis for my motion is that it does enhance the visual attractiveness of the area. Of course, it improves the traffic flow, but I also like the pedestrian and bike safety and connectivity that this implements, as well as the context-sensitive solutions, seeing that happen here in Anchorage, as well as meets the goals of the comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion?
I'll speak to it. I agree with Commissioner Coleman. In particular, the pedestrian connectivity is very safe with the tunnels underneath Clatt and C Street. The roundabout is appropriate, as there's another one just north on C Street. I don't see any conflicts with Title 21, so I'll be supporting the motion.
I just follow up by saying the same. I use that intersection a lot and have seen a terrific increase in traffic and accidents, and I think this is a great solution, and the landscaping is make a big difference in what's there now that's all damaged, and the pedestrian access to what's going to be a very busy recreation area too. Are there any objections to the motion? See none, so the motion passes. And we now have enough people to hear the next case, and we'll excuse Commissioner Coleman and Commissioner Kimmer who have conflicts. And let's see. Whoops, this is our last case tonight is the concept review of the site plan and landscape plan for the Anchorage Veterans Memorial. We'll hear the staff report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this is case 2010-024. The purpose of the project is to make improvements to the Veterans Memorial. Former Mayor Begich appointed the Veterans Memorial Blue Ribbon Task Force to provide specific direction for the redevelopment of the memorial and any future developments associated with the site. The prominent location and the community's ownership of the existing Anchorage Veterans Memorial and the larger context of the Delaney Park Strip make the redevelopment of the Anchorage Veterans Memorial highly controversial. The rigorous and deliberate public process initiated by the Anchorage Veterans Blue Ribbon Task Force has resolved this controversy and has gained approval for the proposed design by the Military and Veterans Affairs Commission, the Parks and Recreation Commission, and the Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission approved the Delaney Park Master Plan on December 7, 2009. The memorial will maintain its current compatibility with nearby uses on the Delaney Park Strip, with the intended expansion of ceremonial events to take place west of the Sitka Spruce flagpole and incorporate the upper plaza area as the potential seating area for the physically disabled, the adjacent lawn area for spectator gathering, the 8-foot-wide queuing pathway for processions, and the accessible flagpole base as the stage. There is also a lighted panel sculptural elements that will create prominent visual interest and interaction with weather and the environment. The intended design is that each lighted panel element is constructed of metal mesh fabric with military-themed scene and/or figure impressions. The proposed site design maintains the existing pedestrian access to I Street and increases accessible pedestrian circulation routes within the site and to its boundaries with the addition of the 8-foot-wide paved pathways connecting to the main plaza, connecting that main plaza with 9th Avenue and 10th Avenue, resurfaced and regraded plaza areas, 6-foot-wide accessible pedestrian ramps, and a 6-foot-wide paved pathway to existing soldier statue adjacent to I Street. Skateboard deterrent seat walls and decorative benches are included in the design to accommodate sitting and contemplation. The intent of the design is to maintain the axial orientation and centrality of the flagpole base and a revised layout providing more ornamental plantings, pedestrian circulation, and adequate facilities for public ceremonies. Snowdrift crabapple trees, Van Hoot spirea, and bird's nest dwarf spruce line the entry points from I Street and the lower plaza, while perennial plantings provide a colorful base for the lighted panel sculptural elements. There are also 2 arcs of existing deciduous and evergreen trees that are located north and south of the main plaza, as shown on sheet 4. I think the landscape architect for the project will speak more about the condition of some of the trees out there and the plans for those. And then I also have also Patricia may have some information regarding the health of those existing trees also. That's all.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? If not, then we'll hear from the petitioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission staff. My name is Dwayne Adams. I'm with USKH, LDN, and I'm representing the petitioner in this case, which is the municipality of Anchorage, basically representing the veterans community within Anchorage. Just as background, the original memorial, or the memorial that currently exists, is many years old, approximately 25 years old. It was a result of primarily a volunteer effort that, with funds that were available, creatively employed the development of a memorial to recognize Alaska's veterans. It is deeply revered and held very closely by the veterans community, but it has a number of deficiencies. Primarily among those is the fact that to get to the flagpole, that is, of course, the focus of the memorial, a person has to walk up steps. And being as how a significant portion of the community is disabled, that is highly problematic. So one of the key tenets of this improvement project is to make that an accessible feature of this development. What that means then is that the entire plate, and I'll move this to the microphone, that you see represented here, if I may, hopefully you can all see what I'm talking about here. To make that accessible, there has to be a ramp from I Street to get people up into that area, and that whole area has to come up 3 feet. So that area is raised. However, while doing that and making this accessible, it is very important, though, that we recognize concerns of the abutting communities, specifically represented by the South Addition Community Council. One of their key concerns was that nothing be elevated significantly higher than what's there. There's a current wall there that's slightly over 5 feet. And so through a 6-month process, very rapid actually relative to the issue, a Blue Ribbon Task Force was convened to address how to design this while accommodating that, and resulted in the selection of the alternative you see before you in the raising of this plate. In doing that and providing the handicap access, though, it does make some significant changes to the site, even though the primary base that you see there is the very thing that will remain after this is improved. It does, though, provide a couple other features. First of all, 2 additional flagpoles to recognize the POW/MIA flag, and then the State of Alaska flag, something that's missing right now. So those are 2 additions. Also there, of course, the handicap ramps. Also with the raising of this platform and the need to accommodate space for additional plaques, there is a heightening of the existing walls by about 2 feet, 1.5 feet actually. And so in doing that, one of the things that happens is that it does change the geometrics aesthetically of this space. And while I think in a lot of public spaces there's a tremendous opportunity to do a lot of compromising with respect to the space because its function is highly more important than the ceremony or the aesthetics of a site. This is a little bit different. This is a memorial that clearly is tremendously important to a number of people, and space does evoke emotion. And so it was through a very deliberate and a very carefully considered process representing members of the military community as well as the public that the design you see before you was constructed or was designed. So with respect to that, one thing I'm saying is there's a tremendous amount of investment in this plan. It was a highly fractious environment we entered when we started this design, and it was only through the convening of this Blue Ribbon Task Force that we were able to get together a well-considered and well-respected group who could speak for the veterans community. And from that evolved this in actually a very genteel and respectable format, something that certainly has been missing from virtually every other public process I've ever been associated with, to be quite honest. So the lines were manipulated tremendously, and it was heavily considered and passed both by the Blue Ribbon Task Force, the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee, before the Municipality of Anchorage, the Park and Recreation Commission. It was adopted into the Delaney Park Strip Master Plan, and now it's before you at the concept level as the Urban Design Commission. Just to walk through it very, very quickly, again, the entry, two of the entries are from I Street, and there are also entries that come in from both 9th and 10th Avenues. There's a large gathering area. This whole plate is raised so that the flagpole is now accessible. And then there is a walk and a gathering space from which the Fallen Warrior ceremony can take place. Many of you have probably witnessed that at many public events. It's become a marked ceremony to initiate many things in this town now, and it's I'm sure many of you have seen that. The one feature that is in addition to the flagpoles is the incorporation of these two pieces that you see before you here that are in essence about 6-foot by 20-foot panels, and from those panels hammered mesh will be shaped and formed to, in essence, I would suggest a ghostly image of fallen warriors, and how that will be rendered is going to be left up to artists, and an RFP is going to be put out in the next couple months, perhaps, to solicit artist input and fabrication of these sheets that will go in there, and they're using metal, then they will attract moisture, condensation, freezing snow, ice, and so they have the ability to change over the season. Also, they'll be lit so that throughout the year they have an effect of providing perhaps strong artful features that respect the story that the artist may choose to tell through these panels. Now, the one thing that you have before you, I think, it's a pretty straightforward design. There's not a lot of excess to it, but as I said, it pretty much has been, I guess, institutionalized. But there are some concerns in the public, and we certainly have no problems representing this community with a staff condition, but I do want to address an aspect that was raised in the last few days, and to that extent I'd like to pass out some the issue of concern is the number of trees that may or may not be lost in the the construction of this facility. Before you have two packets, hopefully, one sheet that's 11 by 17, has some red X's on it, and then some photographs. The 11 by 17, what you have, in essence, is the imposing of the monument and its associated access with the existing vegetation that you see around that. My understanding is that vegetation was installed by the Anchorage Garden Club at some point, and I'm not sure at what point that was, but it is an issue with them that this will, as laid out, displace a number of these trees. The red X's you see on that 11 by 17 represent those trees that will be lost. These are Canada red cherries. For the most part, you do see on there three spruce, actually, various levels that will also have X's that lie in walkways that provide access to this. And one thing I must apologize for is when staff called me to ask what the impact was on vegetation, I was looking at a drawing that only had the trees that would remain, and so I made the comment that it doesn't appear any would be impacted, and so staff acted on that, and that's why that's in your package, and I apologize for that. So let's talk about what those trees are, and if you look at the first sheet you have in the color photographs you have before you, the trees are those Canada reds. They're about 35 feet tall that you see there, and the red ones, the first ones you see behind the soldier, those Canada reds are the first crescent to which staff referred, and then behind that is a second crescent, which is represented in that, with you see the spruce and the Canada reds in that line that will remain. If you flip to the second image, this gives you an idea of the proximity of those. This is looking from the west side of this monument across the face of the monument, looking towards 10th Avenue. And so this gives you an idea of the proximity and the symmetry of those trees. And you can see the two in the image that are closest to the camera are the first crescent the staff referred to, and behind that then is a second crescent. The next image is one of the lanes or walkways in which this proposed improvement project would provide access via a ramp up to this upper area, which is being raised 3 feet. So those trees that you see on the right are the Canada reds, and then there's some small spruce that will also be affected that are beyond that, but these Canada reds are some of those of larger concern. Flipping to that next image, when we looked at these early on, as I went through the records and researched this, one of the reasons that we felt that we could dispose of these trees without much controversy is if you look at the condition of these trees, that first one closest to the camera, certainly they are all in this bad a shape, but if you look at the base of the tree and you look at the cracking up the trunk, it's one of the unfortunate things about a Canada red is they tend to form a branching structure that leads to structural damage over a period of time. These are very old trees, they're 25 years old. They grow quite vigorously, but in our minds, this wasn't going to be a long-lived tree. It was becoming out of context in scale with respect to the monument, and did not add to the monument. One thing I should mention right up front is this is not, like many of our projects, a project within a forested area. These are trees that were planted to respect a monument. And the monument and the significance of that monument in our minds has tremendous importance with respect to whether or not trees should be removed. And given that, that was one of our concerns. If you flip to the last image, you see an imposition of the mass of this new area and its walkway. And if it helps you, you can refer to that 11 by 17, and this image would be taken standing at the very bottom right side sidewalk entering the area. So that would be at this, near the center of that plaza. And then what you see, the white area, is where the rocks would be. The edge of these rocks, as this is laid out, basically provides about 3.5 feet separation. Also understand that this is gaining about 3 feet in elevation, as this is a ramp and is moving up into this terraced area, this upper terrace. So a number of things would happen if we were to keep these trees. Number one, this construction, and as we ramp up, currently we're intending that this be a low curb and that fill be provided so that there is a meshing of the earth and the forms of the earth to the concrete, and there not be a big drop-off. If we were to keep the trees, then first of all there would need to be a retaining wall there with about anywhere from a 0 to a 3-foot drop to get down to the level of the trees, and then of course the wall and its footings are going to impact those trees. So that's one of the issues we're concerned with. You can judge for yourself the character of these trees and the quality of the tree and whether it merits the keeping of the trees. So that's the issue that I think the public has raised, and it's certainly a legitimate and reasonable issue. With respect to this, I don't think it's appropriate for, in a short period of time, with very little notice, for the commission to necessarily have to be forced into making a decision. If you feel that it's worth considering whether or not these trees should be kept and maintained, then I would suggest that a simple amendment to the staff recommendations, to the extent that petitioners shall resolve the need for keeping of the trees shown for removal and resolve this prior to submitting for 65% or the final approval before the commission, and that simply will allow us to work with staff to resolve that situation. My personal thoughts are about the precedents that when it takes place. They're out of scale with the spaces provided. They're in declining health. Some of the suggestions are that if they're properly fed and properly watered and cared for and pruned appropriately, perhaps they will return to health. This is not a high-value landscape tree in my mind. There are tremendous numbers of trees that are more appropriate and deserve a lot more attention than these. But I do understand that this puts the commission in a tough spot, and we're certainly willing to work with staff to come to some resolution. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Are there questions for petitioner? Commissioner Dinwiddie?
Dwayne, have you guys considered moving them somewhere else in the park strip?
Through the chair, Mr. Dinwiddie, these are really old trees, and the roots are all over the place. And so, you mean moving the memorial or the trees?
The trees.
Oh, okay, thank you. The trees are, they're 25 years old. The roots are pancake roots. They spread, they intertwine because they're pretty much running into one another. It would certainly be tough to do that. Also, I would suggest that doing so is going to take a lot of work with the South Edition Community Council. As I said, one of their big issues was that the park strip, in their minds, is a testament to the history of Anchorage. It's an old airstrip, and as we popped memorial after memorial, ball field after ball field, tree grove after tree grove, it's lost its sanctity and its meaning to the community of Anchorage. And one of the things that they were absolutely demanding was that the height be limited. And in your package, if you read that report, you'll see that there were 5 different alternatives. And one of the main reasons this one was chosen is because of its low profile and the small amount of change it would actually suggest into the park strip. So moving trees or where they are, one person's beautiful view is another person's beautiful forest. So it would take work to do that, and you're in the industry. I would I would kind of be interested in your thoughts with respect to moving trees, pancake roots, and what I would suggest is not the best of health.
From looking at the pictures, I agree with your assessment on the condition of the trees, and I think the only way you would even consider moving them would be you have 10 to move or 12 to move, and you're going to end up with 4 or 5 that you're going to have to sacrifice some to get survival rate on the others. You basically skip every other one, and because the root base is pretty wide. But the question being if someone's really, I agree with you, Canada Reds are a dime a dozen. They grow really fast, and they're not a high value tree. They're easy to replace, but at the same time, if there's history with these trees, and I see how it's a sensitive issue, and nobody likes to cut down trees in a park.
And I understand that. This is a tree city, really. Excuse me.
Other questions? No. Do other commissioners have questions? Commissioner Gassick?
Yeah, well, first of all, I was happy to hear about the consideration of Delaney Park Strip as a historic resource, too, and trying to keep those open views. That's really appreciated. But I do have another kind of preservation-related question, and that's in regards to the bronze statue that's currently situated there.
Yes.
And the bronze in this community overall is in questionable condition because maintenance is definitely an issue, and there's issues evident on a lot of them hitting efflorescence, staining. So I was wondering if there's going to be any maintenance provisions on this bronze during this project.
This particular piece, I forget what his name is. There's an affectionate name that the community uses, the Veterans community uses for him. was a statue done by Jane Bugby Jackson out of Cordova. 2 years ago, I believe, because it was fallen into disrepair, it had been defaced, and sadly enough, and there were a lot of issues. Jane Bugby Jackson, who's a bronze artist, was brought up to Anchorage, and she instructed numbers of members of the Veterans community on how to take care of bronze. And so there now is a group in this town who is skilled in how to treat bronze to get the best use out of it and protect it. So there is a group who has kind of self-appointed themselves to take care of that. We're working currently on restoration of the Martin Luther King Memorial, and this is how I learned this as a King delight, that Martin Luther King also has been through the same problems, and they want to get this group possibly to maintain that as well, and get a cadre of people who know bronze and how to take care of it and how to protect it. So there's nothing institutionalized to do that, but there is a group who is committed to doing that, and the flower gardens, for example, are maintained by the Marine women of the Marines. It's a dedicated group of former Marine women who take care of that, and it's for specific areas. It's pretty easy with this monument to get people to dedicate effort. It's one that clearly is deeply held.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dinwiddie, did you have another question? Yeah. Oh, okay. Are there other questions? Okay, go ahead and ask.
I'm just curious. I'm looking at the layout and all the ramps.
This sheet, sir?
I was just looking at different
Okay, thank you.
that you gave me in the middle.
Right.
And you mentioned some curbs that are being added that might not be reflected on this, and I know there's some ramping, and I'm just wondering if there's any concern for skateboarders that might be utilizing the facility and the ramps, and anything that might be done to, I could see that being sort of disgraceful to veterans, and wondering if there's been any consideration being towards kids using that for that type of a playground.
To the Chair, Mr. Garcia, absolutely, and that is, I think, disrespectful. Certainly held that way by the Veterans community, though. The walls, to the extent we have walls, will have indentations at short intervals to disrupt anyone who tries to use the walls for skateboarding. This is a lot of open space. One of the intents was to provide a larger gathering space. A lot of the ceremonies that happen while there's snow on the ground, or could certainly have snow on the ground. There's a good amount of concrete in there that certainly is attractive to skateboarders. Will they be there? I can't imagine they won't. The best thing this town ever did for skateboarders was to heat sidewalks, I can tell you that. It's definitely the best place space in town for a skateboard. So will they use this? I'm certain that they will. The intent is to install security cameras, and so that issues that have involved defacing of the memorial can be addressed. And I would expect it might be used for skateboarders too. But kids need a place to play, and as long as we heat the sidewalks and provide nice spaces downtown, they will attract them there.
Okay, thanks. I just didn't know if that was something that had been looked at.
We did look at it on the walls.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
I noticed you had like flush curb, the bandings. It's
Yeah, in that area, those are all flush, but there will be some walls, depending, for example, in this ramp, there is one wall there. If we end up with two walls, that becomes even more attractive. If we have to protect those trees, then there will have to be another wall there, and that wall will be treated like the opposite wall with indentations. You've probably seen them.
Yeah, I have. So I was just, that's all I had.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dinwiddie?
Maybe I missed. Are these sidewalks heated?
Through Chair, Mr. Wood, no, they're not.
And then with the grades, the long grades, if they get icy, what's the thought? Who's going to maintain in the wintertime? Obviously, the really long grades. It looks like you're averaging about a 2%. It looks like from all the way from I Street in. The whole thing's kind of sloped. There's some safety concerns at all there? Or?
The sloping isn't too severe. It's all 2% for the most part, which is certainly reasonable. Those ramps going up are just slightly less than 5%. That does take maintenance. Right now, Parks is maintaining that memorial. If you were to go by it, or at least when I went by it the other day, there were Parks people out there actually maintaining that, or appeared to be Parks people, and the sidewalk to the area were cleared. And I would expect there's going to be interest in doing that. Funding for Parks changes from year to year, and there are no guarantees. There is something, again, that's pretty closely held by veterans, and particularly on, I think, specifically important pieces like access to the flagpole. I could see that there at least be commitment to do that, but there's no agreement or anything that guarantees that.
Will there be maybe, because obviously there's going to be some nice concrete finishes and maybe some decorative concrete in here. It didn't look well, but obviously you're going to want to if a community group's going to do the maintenance, you're going to want to give them some warnings about ice melting and what kind of salt they put on it. You don't want to have them the first winter throw a bunch of ice melt on there and have them ruin what you guys just got done.
Well, one of the things that are interfacing materials, and each one of those interfacing locations is a chance for water and salts to get down in there, and that's the source of corrosion and degradation of concrete. So that's one thing we're particularly going to try to address, is how to deal with that. But yes, that salt is used much too much in this town, much more than is necessary. And at least there's not the impending doom of litigation that downtown restaurants and commercial establishments feel that they have these days, and so I think they overtreat. The city's pretty good and circumspect with respect to what they do.
Mr. Garcia has another question.
it's not necessarily a question, it's just a statement. And I didn't have the IBC 2009 with me when I looked at this, but there's regulations about how high the vertical drop can be on a slope before you have a landing. And I didn't know, I noticed that you have, it could be like 4 feet of vertical drop, and I don't know if that's within code, and that might be something that you have to look at.
Through the chair, Mr. Barsha, the code requires anything, we're okay as long as we're less than 5%, which this is. It's the ramp with landing applies to anything that was between that and 1 in 12 or 0.833%. And you can go about 30 feet before you have to have a landing. So this meets this, and this is fully within that. And we do have plenty of room to do that in the length of that, and that's why this is actually slightly less than 5%.
Perfect. Thanks.
But thank you.
Commissioner Gassick, do you have another question? Oh, your name's still there. Okay. Are there any other questions? No. I have a few questions. In the area where the trees that are there X'd out, then those beds are still going in there?
I'm sure, yes, they are.
So how many trees are being planted that are new?
Those are all shrubs, as you see. The trees are being planted. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look both right, if you look at these walls, these screen walls,
right,
that are here, there are 2 trees that are at the ends of those walls to kind of those screen panels to frame that space. They're proposed to be snowdrift crabs. Staff to Parks Department has indicated a concern that perhaps those are the wrong plant because snowdrifts grow relatively large, and so we're going to look at that and make sure that we keep the scale, because the scale of the space is tremendously important to us. But there's 2 trees at each of those, so a total of 4 trees that will be placed in here.
So a tree, probably a small tree with white flowers.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
A small tree with white flowers?
Yes, correct.
About how many shrubs are going in? I don't believe there are many shrubs there now. It looks like a lot.
Well, I don't have a plant count on this, which at that level, the planting level, it's showing some specifics.
100?
Yeah, my guess is it's probably slightly more than that, but in that neighborhood. And we aren't, it's showing Bird's Nest and Vanuatu spirea, which are very nice plants, but we're going to look at that. Actually, they're spring snow crabs I see, not snowdrifts. So, we're still going to massage that a little bit and make sure that we got the right plants in the right place.
And, now we have we're inventorying our trees, and these have been inventoried, and I don't believe the state forester maybe saw this plant, the city forester.
No, we didn't. Not until today, actually.
So I'd probably ask that he look at this, but I believe in the inventory, a lot of these trees are already marked for removal because of the condition they were, and you could look at the inventory and see how they're rated and the problems with them. It's obvious in the picture there's mower damage and some are almost dead. So I expect if they're left and they die 3 years from now, there won't be a plan to replace them at that point. So you would just start slowly having gaps as they die and come out?
Madam Chair, yes, that's one of the concerns with any ordering material. We didn't refer to that inventory, and that's a real good point. That's something we should look at. So I don't know whether they were slated. I believe that was done by a contractor, too, if I'm not mistaken.
The city has the inventory of all of them, right, and it'll say what condition. And so if they're slated to come out, this would cover the cost of that, which the Parks Department probably doesn't have, I expect. So, and the management plan for the parks, it's nice having that now. Management plan also is encouraging a diversity of species, and one of the ones recommended for less use are the prunus. because they've been overplanted, and as you noted, you commented, they're short-lived and a problem, maintenance problem. But are there places, if you took these out and further out, that a small trees could go so that you would end up with the same number, which would be like you have 4, you're putting in like another 10 trees that were smaller?
You could certainly do that. There's a couple issues, I guess. First of all, is the concern of the South District Community Council, and that would have to be vetted with them. They're pretty sensitive about, as an example, Martin Luther King was supposed to have 2 aspen groves put in, and in the Delaney Park Strip, you'll notice that wasn't included in the Delaney Park Strip master plan. So to a great degree, that was a concern for the issue that was raised by the South District Community Council. There certainly is the possibility that other trees could be put into this space, but I want to tread very lightly with that community council just because of their concerns, and it's not anything that I have an opinion about one way or the other with respect to that.
And if I understood it correctly, the ones that are there that are over by the spruce that need to be removed, that are damaged, those were going to be replaced? No.
Our intent was to deal with these trees only and then do an assessment with the forester on the others, and as long as we're in there, whether others ought to be replaced. I discussed this with him today, and he said, he looked at those trees, and he found them to be the most outstanding specimens of large diameter prunus in the city, and merit being kept.
All of them, or just the ones outside?
He couldn't see, while certainly he could see, if you look at this, the cracks, the vertical cracks, that to me are a clear indication of a problem. But, for example, he couldn't see the base, and my guess is a lot of that base damage is from maintenance. Mowers run into these things, and it's not so bad in a young tree because they compensate. Older trees have a lot more trouble. So, it probably gets to the, possibility of some sort of a condition in there, if you please, that requires us to coordinate with him if he wants to address that further.
So then, I think I have one other question. This is probably outside your purview, but since those trees are being damaged repeatedly by mowers and weed whackers, is there plans to mulch it looks like the new ones will be in bed, so they won't be prone to that kind of damage. Could the others be protected so that they're not continually mowed into?
That's a real good point. That certainly could be incorporated. As long as we're in there, we may as well do something right there for the trees.
Let's see. I think that was the only questions I had.
Okay.
Any others?
Thank you.
Do we have a motion? We have a motion from Commissioner Dinwiddie. Is there a second? We have a second. Would you like to speak to your motion? Make the motion.
I'd like to make a motion we approve these at the phase that they are in. Obviously, we'll see them again with the comments. I think that I admire the fact that all the parties that have come into I guess I'll make the motion to approve first as it's presented, and then I'll speak to the motion after.
We have a second from Commissioner Gassick.
As I was saying, I appreciate the fact that the petitioner has gone to the South Addition, the veterans, all the parties that have gone into this. I think that they've incorporated Title 21 and also the community involvement in this project to get everybody's input who's going to be affected by it, and I think that they're on the right track to a project that'll look good and do the best to improve the memorial and at the same time keep the park's intent. So I would make the motion that we approve this.
Did you have any conditions?
No conditions.
Are there others who wish to speak to it? You can just propose conditions to the amendment if Commissioner Dinwiddie agrees.
Sorry. Provide protection to the existing trees to avoid future mower damage or maintenance damage as one. And then the other would be to work with the community groups to consider the retention or removal of the existing trees in the first arch there near the memorial.
Do we need a second for the amendment conditions? I think we don't.
Since it's a friendly amendment, as long as the mover and seconder concur, it can be accepted as a friendly amendment, and then the whole motion's voted on, including the friendly amendment.
I concur.
And I do, since I second. I'd like to speak to the motion, too, and that would be that this is definitely a well-deserving project. I'm happy to see that this memorial is being further enhanced while still enhancing the visual attractiveness of the landscaping by the memorial, while still keeping the historic significance of the park strip itself, and continuing to try and conserve and maintain our historic bronze sculptures in the community, which is really well appreciated.
I just had a couple comments. I obviously, due to my job, I appreciate trees and I plant them and try to save them. But some of these are beyond saving. They're in the later parts of their life. They're a short-lived tree. They're in poor form when they went in the ground, and they haven't been maintained adequately. And you can see that some of them are dead or going to be dead in a year or so, and Parks never has adequate funding to replace trees, so this is an opportunity to look at those and replace the ones that, or remove the ones that shouldn't be there any longer. Some of them are not only disgraceful to the memorial, they're just disgrace to good trees because they're in such poor form. And I would like to recommend, either there's a condition or recommendation that the plan be reviewed with the municipal forester and with the community. I guess I'm concurring with yours in part, just adding the municipal forester to that list. Can I do that? Oh, okay. Well, somebody else could do that. I mean, and if there are other places that trees could be planted so that we end up with the same number and they're small. Another one that came to mind, and this isn't a condition, but just a thought, is like a Japanese tree, lilac, which is also a small tree with white flowers, and it blooms late June, early July, so that it's during maybe the July 4th ceremonies when you have the crab apples blooming during the Memorial Day ceremonies. But that's just a thought, not a condition. That would be up to the designers. But I would concur with looking at what you can do, and I don't think the trees, in my opinion, are worth not having the access for disabled veterans to attend memorials. They're just not going to be there very long, whatever you do to them. And it certainly wouldn't be worth moving them somewhere else. I'd rather see the money that would go into maintaining a tree that's in poor form and not going to last go into putting a tree in a park setting here or in another part of town, because we never have enough money to plant all that need to be planted.
I tend to agree with you, Commissioner Joyner, Chair. one of the things, I think these trees are probably older than 25 years, and I think they're really close to the end of their lifespan as a prunus anyway. You know, if there is pushback that some kind of compromise on these trees needs to be addressed, then I would encourage to move a couple of them, and rather than, because you're right, there's not very many. Even if in a perfect world you might get 10 years and then these trees are just going to crash, and even a specimen prunus isn't going to last much longer than 35 years to 40 years max. So I concur with your assessment, and I think the urban forester is definitely, the city forester's opinion is definitely should be added to the. Yes, I concur.
I do too.
Do you have a comment from staff?
Not a comment, just Mr. Commissioner Gassett, could you repeat your motion for the condition, not the motion, but the condition? I think it was...
There were two conditions, and so it'd be condition number 2 was...
I have the first one, the second one, please.
Oh, okay. So now I think it's changed a little bit and really be considering consider the retention of the trees in the first arc in the memorial with members of the community and municipal forester and staff.
Could I clarify, is that to leave then what will be in the final recommendation up for staff to make the decision to resolve with the petitioner?
No, it'd still be coming to us for the final design review.
What would be in the final to come back, but they would resolve it, what goes in the final recommendation?
Right.
Does everyone have that? Understand the motion? Are there any questions? Are there objections to the motion as stated then? Okay, seeing none, then the motion passes. And someone can bring our 2 commissioners back. Okay. Are there any reports anyone has? We did get the report from the 1% for art. Did everybody see that? Jocelyn Young sent on the school. Was it just the school? I didn't bring it.
I can't remember at this point. I didn't get a copy in my packet, so...
Yeah. I was on that committee, and it went on quite a long time and was discussed for a year. And part of the issue, if you haven't been on a committee, or maybe you have, that the first design the committee liked it a lot. A lot of us really liked it. And then someone from the school district and then some others said they immediately saw a cross when they looked at it, which is funny because some of us had looked at it repeatedly and never saw a cross. But you say, well, you could. It was sort of totem-like. So it was decided it was not going to be approved by the school district. So we went back to the artist for another design, and it took him a matter of months to decide if he would submit another one, but he did. And I think it'll look cool. It'll be a big, tall, vertical sculpture that has lighting in the winter and outside so the community can see it. It's interesting how those go if you haven't been on a committee yet. And were there any other reports?
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the department is going to be discussing shortly, perhaps in next month, and we might have some resolution by next month meeting, but perhaps not, but how to treat these meetings in terms of members of the public wanting to speak at them. It's been an issue that we really haven't resolved to everyone's satisfaction, so I think it's something that the department is going to look at more closely. In the past, if people have come, members of the public and have wanted to speak about any issue about one of the cases, the practice has been is that the commission has allowed them to speak as a courtesy. But technically, they shouldn't be allowed to speak because these are not public hearings, they're public meetings, and with a public hearing, those people that either live within 500 feet of the project are all notified. They get notices in the mail letting them know that this project is going to be discussed at this meeting tonight, and if they wish to come and express their opinion, they're welcome to do so. We don't do that for most of the projects that the UDC reviews because they're not public hearings. Yet people still want to come and speak about about some issue concerning the cases. And so it's been a problem area for us, but I think we're going to have to finally come to some resolution about that. So just to let you know that those discussions are going to be taking place probably next month.
The problem with that, one problem is if a person had opinions but was told it wasn't a public hearing, they might not come, so you only get one side or the...
Right. Or just,
it isn't quite fair, and then people could start learning that if you just show up, we'll let them talk, and we could have sort of unofficial public hearings on every topic. So I agree. I think it's important to be consistent and have a policy that doesn't vary. The only other thing, and I think we still want to talk about the outhouse restroom design, but I think we should wait till Mr. Doherty's back, so we can make sure that's on the agenda for next time.
What do we call that, outhouse?
I was trying to think. I don't think we call it outhouses, but whatever.
Outhouses.
Restroom facilities. The facilities.
Did you guys get the email that I sent? I had asked a civil-type friend of mine about that, and anyway, if you have any questions about that before next month, just let me know, and I'll try and prepare.
It might be helpful if staff could gather all that. We've had 3 or 4 emails on that, gather them up and send them all together so the new people and then the ones of us who maybe can't locate them all.
Was this about the portable toilets?
Yeah.
I don't know that I kept them. Did anybody keep them?
I think James was keeping them because he was kind of
he
was taking the lead on the issue, and so we were supposed to send information to him related to the public restrooms.
Okay.
So he may have it.
Okay.
Doesn't he have a PowerPoint presentation prepared that he hasn't had an opportunity to
Jill has
display yet?
information, I think.
He mentioned to me at the last meeting that's what he wanted to put together. I don't know if he's got it done yet or not, but he did want to do something like that, yes.
I was thinking it's been a couple months, and we're not going to remember what was in Mark's email, even if we remember getting it. So, okay. Is there anything else, or we could have a motion to adjourn? Motion's made to adjourn. Is there a second? Thank you. We're adjourned. Can I hit the hammer one time?